Now we're going to cover a subject or a part of your text that talks about direct-to-consumer sale and, of course, online advertising. And is it deceptive? Because it's very, very interesting. When it comes to online advertisement, there are even more agencies outside the FTC that regulates or monitor the advertisement. The Food and Drug Administration is another agency. The Department of Transportation is another, because property information is becoming property, and through the internet it goes through different states, and different state has different laws about trespassing. So this is very, very interesting. And again, remember, does advertising mold or reflect the value of our culture? And this is something for you that, you know, aside, like I always say at the beginning of the semester, it depends. It really depends, because maybe by looking at the advertisement, you never thought about doing something, and now that you saw it advertise it, you might be tempted to do it. Or maybe the advertisement can see a need and tries to encourage people to use that product so that they can be satisfied, or their need might be fulfilled. So here we're going to go into direct-to-consumer and online advertising deceptive, keeping in mind that advertising is limited freedom of speech in a way that if the agency, the Federal Trade Commission, or the Food and Drug Administration, or the Department of Transportation, or the FBI, or whatever, is misrepresenting or is harming someone out there, then the advertisement will be pulled out or stopped. So the telemarketing and electronic advertising is a very interesting subject, and this section of lecture highlights two federal statutes that, and the FTC is very much in control of it. The Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which is very interesting, and of 1991, prohibits phone solicitation using an automatic telephone dialing system or a pre-recorded voice and the transmission of ads via fax without the recipient permission. Now, I don't know about your situation, but I know that I get pre-recorded telephone advertising, and I do get also by the fax. I get also advertisement, and of course that's illegal. Does it mean that we stop doing it? No, it does not. We still have companies that do that, and one of the reasons is that all these advertisements, like spamming and junk mail, they are taking a bandwidth, and it causes a lot of problem because the information that is more important will not get through it. The Telemarketing and Consumer Fraud is another one. An Abuse Prevention Act in 1994 directed the FTC to establish rules governing telemarketing and to act against fraudulent telemarketers. They calling you up, selling things, and especially the elderly, which they're so glad to hear somebody calling them up and selling things, and it's misrepresenting, and it's consumer fraud. There's no question about it. In response, the FTC issued the telemarketing sale rule of 1995. Essentially, it bans misrepresentation and requires disclosure. In addition, most states also have laws regulating phone solicitation. Here is a case that you had in your textbook, very, very interesting, the Perez case. The Perez case was brought by a group of women who had experienced problem with the contraceptive Norplant. The FDA approved the reversible contraceptive that can prevent pregnancy for up to 5 years. Its maker, White Laboratories, marketed the Norplant heavily to women rather than doctors, advertising on television and in women magazines. The plaintiff in this case claimed that these ads touted the convenience and simplicity of Norplant, and that none carry warnings of side effects and other problems mentioned in your textbook. This is very, very interesting. All this stuff is mentioned also in the case. Please read the entire case in your textbook and discuss your views with the following question. What is the learned intermediary rule? For years, the drugs, there was a salesperson that was between the consumer and I guess I would say the pharmaceutical company, and they would go to visit the doctor, and the doctor then would choose what prescription or what drugs is good for you. And now with going to direct to consumer or online or advertising on TV, there is no middle person. And I would like to know what you have learned from reading the case. What's the purpose of the learned intermediary rule? And explain the context in which it became law. How come it became law? Why was it enforced? Again, remember, ethics is expectation of behavior. And at the beginning of the semester, I mentioned to you as that expectation of behavior comes from our Christian Judeo background of the Bible. What is acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior. And the Constitution was written when we as a nation, 68% were British, so it was more of a homogeneous society, and now we don't have that kind of percentage at all. And the law is trying to enforce a behavior that is reasonable, that is acceptable, and that reflects the prevailing culture, the culture that made this country what it is. So I would like you to read that in your textbook and share your understanding of that rule and why did it become law. On what legal grounds does the majority believe that the learned intermediary rule does not apply where drugs are advertised directly to consumer? And you know that the legal grounds that they are discussing comes from an ethical perspective, and I would like you to explain that. What was the pro and con of the direct-to-consumer advertising from a consumer perspective? We have some problem today because a lot of our senior citizens are getting their prescription from Canada. And what's the problem here? Well, I know of one case where the drugs are not pure. They are diluted, and next thing you know, the senior citizen is taking the drugs, is in remission of cancer, but the drug is not doing what it's supposed to be doing because it's diluted, and the person died. So here's a new situation, and then of course, being that it's in Canada, we have a problem because of jurisdiction. Now, how does the dissent view this issue? And the dissent is a judge that express his legal reasoning, and often the legal reasoning of the dissent becomes the legal reasoning of the majority within 5 to 10 years. So I would like you to read how the dissent expressed this issue. Then, why do lifestyle drugs sell so well online? They're the one that goes really quicker than anything else. In the fall of 1998, Time magazine was criticized for planning to devote its first issue of 1999 to a single theme, the future of medicine, with the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer, Inc. as a single sponsor. What ethical perspective comes in your mind right away? What do you see here? Is there a conflict of interest? What might be the argument for and against the idea of a sole advertiser special issue? I mean, what's going on here? Just like sometime when you watch the news and they would tell you that there is a study, you know, that if you eat too much chocolate, you will have pimples on your face, or if you're drinking too much coffee. And they always tell you who paid for the study. Well, if the person that paid for the study says that it's good for you to have chocolate, and it is a chocolate company, I don't think that is ethical. So here's a situation that I would like to see, you know, what's going on here. Do you see any ethical problems? And I would like to read that. The following case involved telemarketers engaged in allegedly deceptive advertising. And here we go, the Federal Trade Commission versus Growth Plus International Marketing. And this is a 2001 case. where a group of Canadian corporations and individuals engage in telemarketing to sell Canadian lottery packages to consumers in the United States. What they did not tell the consumer is that the sales were illegal, because, as you know, gambling is illegal in the United States. They also misrepresented the buyer's chances of winning and used high-pressure sale tactics. The Federal Trade Commission filed a suit in the Federal District Court against Growth Plus International Marketing and the others, alleging deceptive advertisement. The FTC asked the court for, among other things, to stop it right away. You have to stop this Canadian company from selling this lottery package because it's fraudulent and deceptive. And of course, the court granted the request. The FTC made a strong case against the defendants whose misrepresentation misled the consumer. In this case, the balance of equities, remember the word balance. What is the underlying goal of our legal system? Is to make a balance between the individual right, in this situation will be the Canadian company, and the rights of society at large. And that balance is overwhelming because more and more the court is leaning toward the rights of society at large, because they are the one that will comply with the law. What's the use of us protecting one individual when the other or the reasonable people that does not agree with that on one individual right? So here is the equity. The balance of equities weighs heavily in favor of the issuance of preliminary injunctive relief. You know, there's a lot of people in the United States, just because of one company in Canada is hurting people here in the United States. There's a strong public interest in an immediate halt to illegal sale of lottery tickets accomplished through the use of misleading devices. Now, this is where it's very interesting because, again, we don't want to encourage that kind of behavior. We want to stop it as soon as possible, especially when, on top of everything else, it's false. There's not such a lottery. By contrast, the court says, perceives very little private interest in the continuance of such a sale pending further proceeding in the case. So that means this case is not over, but the state or the FTC, the court ruled in favor of them to stop the sale right away. And in the meantime, they will go to court to see what is the evidence, what's the purpose, and who's going to pay for what and where, that kind of thing. Discussion. Do you see any ethical problems with online sales? Do you see any ethical problems? Because, and you're going to see that different people's going to argue from a different perspective. And of course, the senior citizens that are able to buy prescription and save $50, they don't see anything wrong. And again, the ethical perspective would be what? Consequence. And if they argue as a right, I have a right to buy prescription, and it's my choice to go, if I have to go over outside the United States to save money because it's impossible what the prescription cost in this country, that is my right to have that. And the other argument would be from a consequential argument. If I can save $50 and I have my living is in a fixed income, why not? And of course, for the good of society. Well, is it for the good of society? And of course, it depends if you're thinking of outcome. Is it? The fact that the prescription is diluted, does it really help the person? And these are the things that I like to see from what ethical perspective you can present your argument that online sales, they have a lot of problems. Or maybe you don't see any problems. Maybe you think it's a good idea. So I would like to that you post your ethical views in the discussion. Thank you.